Hello, I'm Michael Morris, the Superintendent of the Amherst Public Schools, and thank you for joining us for another episode of A Window into ARPS. With me today are Principal of Crocker Farm, Derek Shea, and the Principal of Fort River, Diane Chamberlain.
Hi, Mike.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Before we start talking about your schools, tell us a little bit about yourselves. So what's your connection to Amherst? How long have you worked in the district? Derek, you mind starting us?
No problem. So I moved here to Amherst in the mid-90s. I came here, my wife and I came here to go to grad school, and we loved it. We loved the town, we loved the area. I was fortunate enough to get a job at Fort River as a guidance counsellor in '97. And this is my 21st year here in the district. I've worked at Fort River, at the high school. Now I'm the principal at Crocker Farm. We've got 2 kids in the school district. They're in the high school, and we have no plans to move ever.
Thank you, Derek. Diane?
So I came here in 2004 from San Francisco. My husband was also looking for grad school, but our list of places to go from San Francisco was very short, looking for a college town, liberal-minded folks that valued education, and this was a natural fit. Came to the Amherst school system as the coordinator of the South Amherst campus and was there for a few years. And I've been a lot of places in the Amherst school systems. I did a little bit of time as the assistant principal at the middle school, assistant principal at the high school, and have landed first as the assistant principal at Fort River, and now this is my second year as principal there. But we have a home here as well, so my kids are going to be entering the region at the middle school level. They're in Leverett now, but we are here to stay as well.
Turning to the schools that you work in, we're taping this about halfway into the school year. But one of the things that we know is when people who come in and view this don't necessarily just have children or are connected to your schools. They may just be residents of the towns and not be aware of all the good work that's happening at Crocker Farm and Fort River and Wildwood, I'll say as well. Derek, do you mind just sharing a couple of things that people might not know? They're new to students or the faculty or the families this year?
Okay, so maybe the first thing I should say is, so Crocker Farm is also a preschool, so there's preschool through 6th grade. So we have somewhere in the region of, I don't know, 75, 80 people who work in the building. It's a very stable population in terms of faculty, staff, teachers, paraeducators. But every year, 3 or 4, 5 people maybe join us. So I think one of the things that's worth saying is that this year we have a brand new 3rd grade teacher, Miss Corylyn Torres, who actually came to us from Fort River. She was a graduate student there. Corylyn's originally from Hawaii. Moved to the mainland many years ago to go to community college. I think she graduated with a degree in astronomy from UMass, astrophysics or something really quite technical. So she's a first-year teacher and doing a fabulous job in 3rd grade. We have a brand new librarian this year, and both of you know Susan McQuaid, who was you worked with Susan, probably in the district 25, 30 years, retired. So we went scouting, looking for people. We found this wonderful person, Waleska Santiago,
Who joined us in an earlier episode.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
okay, so Waleska, has a museum background. She has a high school background in various places. We just fell in love with her when we interviewed her. So a couple of new paraeducators, Holly Day, who's got a kid in the district, Drew Skelton, who's a young man who came to us, Fort River grad, high school grad, well known in the town. Margarita Carano, if I say her last name properly, who's one of our new ELL paras. So again, what's new, right, sometimes is some people, stable population, but those are folks I'd like to make sure we get a nice shout out and welcome them to our community.
So I could echo the same sentiment. I think in general we have a pretty stable faculty and staff, luckily, and people are committed to the school and the district and our town. But we as well have a new librarian, which is an integral part of the school system, I think, and the school itself. And it's funny because there was a moral dilemma in hiring her because she actually came from my own children's elementary school, and I knew of her work there, her deep commitment to social justice, and her expertise in the field of children's literature. So Miss Lanny is new to us this year, and again, connected to all aspects of the school. We've got and then again, that was a retirement as well. Miss Ludington had been in the library for a long, long time. Yeah. And our longtime music teacher also retired last year, Ms. White. So we have Heather Krasner, who just had her first public performance this weekend at the MLK breakfast, which the kids knocked it out of the park. Small cohort of kids showed up and really, really sung well. And we've got our first concert tonight, so exciting stuff happening there. And one of the things thinking about in engaging our families is Lanny really wants to make the library kind of a centerpiece of the building that families feel like they can use as a resource. Our PGO coffees are now held in the library, which is really nice to see adults populating and using the library. There's a cart that's designated for parental support and information around a host of things that pertain to kids' development. So again, we want the families to know that we are a resource for them and not just a place of learning for their kids, but for families as well. Oh, and the sensory room, I didn't mention that. That's new this year as well. Knowing that our population really needs a lot of support with sometimes some social emotional learning and trying to put aside some of the things that are happening in the outside world and really focus on learning. So we have a sensory room that we just developed this year that is still being developed and trying to come up with ways for the students to learn self-regulation strategies so they can really focus on their learning. So that's exciting too.
One of the things that I've been taking when I've been at Fort River, both last year and then this year, is kind of the We Choose Love, and some of you mentioned some students struggling with outside events that don't necessarily happen in Amherst but affect us here. Can you talk a little bit about the genesis of that and how that embeds into the Fort River culture?
Sure. So it actually really started last year when, around November, it felt like there was this overwhelming message of hostility and conflict, and both our staff and students were really feeling it, and staff felt like we needed to take some action. And this was by November 20th, we had written kind of a manifesto of a pledge to our students, making sure that they and their families knew that everybody is welcome. And at Fort River, you belong no matter what your cultural background is and no matter what your history is and no matter what challenges you're facing day to day, that this is your school, you can learn here, you're valued here and respected here. And We Choose Love actually is kind of our way of saying that to students, that anytime there's a kind of conflict, whether it be adult to student, student to student, we all have conflicts at some part in our life, that we're going to talk about it and work it out, and choose love as a way to work through that issue, that we're going to discuss it and not be hostile about it, but try to really understand how to communicate our needs and our desires. So again, we have this wonderful staff pledge that was developed. It was based on a post from GLSEN actually, that named some certain populations in the community that had felt really not welcome in larger communities. And we wanted to make sure we called that out and said, of course you're welcome here, of course you're welcome here. So our staff pledge is now posted at the front of our building and on our website, and we have stated it to our students in assembly and certainly want to live by it every single day. So everybody, including families, knows that no matter what their struggle, that so Fort River is a safe place for them.
Likewise, at Crocker, we feel like we've developed over the last, 8-10 years. Mike, you were principal there when beginning in all of this, and following on from the great work from Mr. Wiley, is trying to develop this culture, right, where kids feel safe in the building, right, where they feel like they know someone, they're connected to someone, and I think we feel like we're pretty close with that stuff. I think we're feeling like it's really a safe building to be. But having said that, there's 400 plus kids in our building. And there's always going to be times when stuff happens,
right,
when people disagree or when people don't get along or when people, sort of question each other. It could be in a game, it could be in the classroom. And so we've been working on and sort of like a mini version of sort of restorative practice, where we'll work with kids and we get this little sort of almost 3-step process. It's like, what happened, who was harmed, and how are we going to make it better, right? And in some ways, we're trying to use that sort of little 3-step process to, in some ways, sort of normalize the notion that there is sometimes going to be conflict. But there's a way, right, where we can work through it and we can have a sort of positive way to move forward.
Right.
Because again, I think we're working really hard in our buildings to develop these, strong, welcoming cultures, but stuff happens. And you have to have a mechanism to help make it better. So that's a thing, a little pitch that I'd like to make, that we're continuing to work on it. We've got some teachers doing it more than others. Right. But I think a fantastic way to go about solving conflict with kids.
Yeah. And it goes right down to a culture of kindness, that we can expect conflict. Yeah, it's a natural part of life, and I actually want students to develop strong ways to advocate for their beliefs and go through that conflict in a healthy way, so they can be heard and they can express themselves in a calm way, so people can actually hear them and then come to some solution collaboratively. It's a skill.
It is, and one may be in decline more generally. And
well, our examples right now are not helping.
Yes.
So that's, again, where that kind of came from, is trying to fight what the students are seeing through a lot of the media that they're presented with, and we don't have a filter for all the time.
That's right, and I appreciate the counter narratives that you're developing with your students around conflict's normal, it's natural, and resolvable.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So oftentimes I get the question, and I'm sure you do too, what energizes you? What do you enjoy about being an elementary school principal? It's an interesting life that you lead, and what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? But more importantly, what do you enjoy about it? What motivates you when you wake up in the morning?
I'll just tell you briefly. I mean, I get there every day about 7:30, and it's quiet. I get there. There's half a dozen teachers, the early sort of birds, people there, crack of dawn. I get there in the morning, and first thing I do in the day is connect to Kenny Pratt, our head custodian. We chat a little bit. I do a little walk of the building. 8 o'clock comes, there's a whole bunch of people there. We problem solve for the day as we start. 8:20 comes, all of a sudden buses are coming, 400 kids. We're out in the playground, we're playing, we're having fun. Cafeteria, getting everyone to class by 9. 9 to 11:30, I'm off wandering around doing my thing, getting in classrooms. Today I was in watching some second graders dissect their 4th version of the Three Little Pigs, looking at what different versions of a story. Lunchtime, you're hanging out, helping kids eat and play. 1:30, often you go to meetings, you do things. There's the structure of the day, but the beauty in all of it is that never is there one day, and we like stability in our school, but no 2 days are ever the same. Right. It's always something new. I'll tell you a quick one. On Friday, I was in the cafeteria having this very serious conversation with 6th grade who had served as volunteers for our Martin Luther King Day celebration. What a great event that was. And so I'm in the process of sort of holding court with these 6th graders and saying thank you. And we're in the cafeteria, and not a pin could be heard. 6th graders are very quiet. And all of a sudden, these 2 little kindergartners come bursting through in the cafeteria. And they're like, Mr. Shea, we left you a note on your desk. And the whole place erupted, right? Because they didn't know we were having a big, important meeting. Not important, but a meeting. So listen, every day is never dull. It's never the same. I never have to look at my watch. It goes super fast. There's a lot of people in the building who enjoy connecting with one another. So it's easy to be motivated, super easy.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. I concur, yes. And I appreciate that too, that I'm not the kind of person that wants to do rote things again and again and again. So it's very stimulating, and it's very fulfilling to continue to learn. And I think that's really what motivates me, is that I don't have all the answers, so I want to hear from other people to see what suggestions they have. I want to hear from families to see how we can best support our students. So that human element is really something that I was drawn to, because I certainly didn't imagine myself here when I was younger. I don't know about you. This is not where I had thought I'd be, but I'm excited to be here. And there's nothing better than seeing the magic of students learning, or thinking about the messages that you give around kindness and choosing love. When they can feed that back to you in a little moment, you see a little spark of that, it's just magical. So we had an assembly last week as well to celebrate Dr. King and to think about kindness and keep growing that culture of kindness. And we have 3rd graders that have started a big message board for messages of peace, and our 1st graders and 5th graders collaborated on this random act of kindness board where you can go pick a task to do, and within a day the job is to go do that random act of kindness for someone in the building. So little things like that seem insignificant are really significant, because they have a big impact on the community, and students that are developing these ideas have great pride in it. So we have this recognition system around catching the wave and all of our behavioral expectations, and students can earn blue tickets. So one of our 6th graders came up with the idea of, as a 6th grader, I want to be able to recognize things if it's on the bus or something. Teachers don't ride the bus, so as a 6th grader, I would love to recognize that. So can we start 6th grade pink tickets that are catch the wave tickets? Well, yes, because that certainly goes right hand in hand with that culture of kindness and recognizing the things that we want students to keep doing again and again and again. So to hear ideas fresh from students and to be able to put those into play is really fulfilling, and I think allows them to get even more invested in their community and their school.
And I hope this doesn't sound like a cliche in some ways, but I love the people that I work with. I love working with them. We have a really talented, and you know this because you've helped hire a lot of people in town. We have a very talented group of people. teachers, paraeducators, psychologists, counsellors, ELL teachers, math coaches, literacy coaches. My assistant principal, Shari Conklin, is unbelievable in terms of talent. So I love getting up in the morning knowing that I've got this really strong group of people who I work with and work with me, and that makes it super easy to get up and go to work. And it takes away tons of the stress knowing the talent and the skill level, again, who are willing to keep getting better and better, that's in our building. It makes it easy.
To know that you do have a team behind you is
Super
huge.
strong.
What are some exemplary programs or courses in your school that the general public may not be aware of? Schools changed a lot in the last 30 years, and schools are funny in that once your children may leave schools, the connection's a little. People other than voting don't really naturally come into the school buildings beyond that time. So can you tell us a little bit about some things that you're really excited about, that our students are really enjoying at Fort River, that the general public might not be?
Well, I think our teachers are incredibly creative and try to bring their imagination into the classroom as much as they possibly can. So I appreciate that from them and all of our staff in a significant way, because it isn't one size fits all, that's for sure. So how can we reach out to a student who might not be having the easiest time, and they're coming up with innovative ideas on a regular basis? So whether it be project-based learning or interdisciplinary work, that's one of the things we're really talking about a lot this year, is how can we bridge the gap so everything doesn't seem so compartmentalized. It can happen really easily in a school for silos to develop. So how do we get rid of those silos and have the students see the bigger picture, and that everything can be relatable? And that's difficult sometimes when you have specific curriculums to follow. But in general, we've got a lot of support from our science coordinator at the district level. And people are jumping into the garden work, to the connecting with the earth, making things come to real life, into real life play. 6th grade just did decimals and fractions, and so they did all this work with restaurants. And there was every to-go menu in town that was in there, just making it come to life outside of a book and outside of a box of supplies, making it applicable. There's also a lot of fun things that are happening. There's a big emphasis on social and emotional learning and trying to do community development in the classroom as well as the whole school. There's certainly a lot of thinking about how do we transition and how do we take care of the people around us when we're making those transitions so our actions don't impact everybody, which is tough when you don't have walls in some of the places in the building. But there's also some extracurricular things that are happening that I think help engage some of those students that are potentially struggling. Some of our teachers offer during lunchtime alternatives to the cafeteria, like robotics club and Minecraft club. We have a fantastic student council that one of our 6th grade teachers, Tim Austin, leads. So there's an opportunity for leadership for students. A student newsletter was developed last year, and that's amazingly creative. Students do cartoons and videos, and we send it out to all of our families and the school community for students to see what's happening, not just in the classroom, but outside of the classroom as well. So there's an avenue for them to bring in the things that they do for pleasure as well, which is really great. Some of our classroom teachers do incredible work with hands-on learning, which is something that I truly believe in. It's kinetic, and that's an important part of learning. And more of our teachers are trying to figure out ways to make that kinetic work take place in the classroom. Our 5th grade team is working with the Hitchcock Center really closely and about to figure out if they can harness rainwater as well. So again, hands-on learning and trying to make a real-life application project that goes across all disciplinary subjects. So there's a lot to think about. Even at kindergarten, we have our guidance counselor teaching mindfulness in the kindergarten classroom. Yeah. So really thinking about the development of every aspect of the student, where it's not just reading and writing and math. Yeah. We're trying to allow them a lot of personal growth, because we know that's really healthy for students to think about who they are and who they are as learners and how they can connect to us. Started a 6th grade advisor, so I'm going to keep going for a while.
You are.
We started a 6th grade advisory this year as well, kind of a pilot to help students think about their transition to middle school and the format there, but also give them another opportunity to connect with an adult in a meaningful way, because we know that the more adult relationships students have, the more successful they are. So there's no shortage of ideas. And that's another motivating factor and exciting factor.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, as you say, that the trick and the complex piece is sometimes trying to keep us focused on like a certain amount of ideas at once, right? Because we have this habit where we live, right? We're always thinking, we're always trying to explore. So in some ways, one of the things that we're trying to do a little bit at Crocker Farm is to think about what are the, as you mentioned there, what are the 4, 5, 6 things that are really sort of jumping out at us, and stick to those things. And so you mentioned the mindfulness piece. I think that really has become a big central sort of piece of our school, where I would say 85-90% of the classrooms are using mindfulness, and if not a daily basis, several times a week. The whole idea again, and I've been part of a number of sessions where kids can find a few minutes, whether it be 3, 4, 5, to be able to sort of catch their breathing, get their focus, get their energy sort of back, sort of in a central place, and hopefully, be ready to go forward. We've even tried a thing, sort of borrowing some ideas from Finland, actually. So here's what happens in Finland. In Finland, you do school for 45 minutes, and then you play for 15. And so we had a bunch of teachers, did some reading on some of that stuff, and so we're not exactly doing what Finland does, but we've got a whole group of teachers right now who are, in the morning. So for example, Mary Donoghue's first grade class, they're really firing hard into the math work, and then all of a sudden I look at my window and they're just running around, to get back themselves, re-energized and ready to go. A little snack, and off you go. I think the co-teaching thing is an important piece for us to mention that's happening in our schools. I know there's been a big, I think, commitment, financially and other, to make co-teaching work. We're really, I would say, again, a huge percentage of our classrooms, right, whether it's special education co-teaching or English language learners, more than one teacher in the classroom, kids then being in the classroom rather than being extracted to go somewhere else. Lots of different minds, teachers working together, right, trying to figure out how to plan together, to have the time to plan together and think about the work. I'll tell you just one thing that you would love. Jeff Lefebvre is a second grade teacher, so he has a thing on a Friday called Community Bread. You gotta love this one. So in the morning, he has his one of his volunteers, happens to be his wife a bunch of the times, who each student in a morning goes out and has this recipe, and they make this beautiful bread. It's a variety of different things. And what happens is they really make it. They put it all together, and then after lunch or after 2 o'clock comes, families are invited, and he puts on this huge spread in his classroom like you're having a meal, like at a restaurant. Tablecloths, all the cutlery, stuff I never learned until I was a working class kid. Never learned that stuff until I was in my 20s. People come, they break bread together. They have the bread, they have fruits. They talk about they actually have some of the veggies from the garden, right? Because they're the second graders are really the garden people, and they talk about where the food comes from, right? They talk about the different sort of origins of where it came from. The nationalities are brought in, and this has been a spectacular hit amongst families. So again, we're always looking to do more. We're trying to just figure out, all right, let's not drive ourselves, too far.
Yeah, it's funny, both of you mentioned the gardens. One of the things that I've heard, particularly from older residents who've heard about our gardening program, is that it's actually hearkening back to when they were in school. That this is something that's part of Amherst history as an agrarian, historically an agrarian town, and the value separate from career or vocation, just of being closer to the land and understanding that as a value. So it's been interesting because I've seen the kids, I've seen the students really enjoy it. I mean, often from my office closer to Wildwood, I'll walk over if there's a gardening day. Came over to Fort River once last year, the year before, and to see the student engagement is really high, because I didn't grow, unfortunately, green thumb, not so much in my wheelhouse. My father certainly, but it's interesting how multi-generational that concept is, that sometimes we've gotten away from understanding where we are in place and land, and it's really brought kids and families back into the fold with it. So I appreciate that. So we're just about out of time. So my last question is just, people hear this, they say, oh, what about that gardening program? What about the bread that gets baked? How do they get in touch with you or the school if they're a family and they want to walk around, see what the school's like, or if they're just current family and wants to have a question? What's the best way to get in touch?
Well, I mean, we have a website. I mean, don't ask me to name it off the top of my head.
I got it.
You can go Crocker Farm, but you call the school 362-1600, and Kathy and Angela, our 2 secretaries, are always willing to set something up, and I'm happy to meet with folks. I'm happy to give a tour. We have a beautiful property, outside and inside, and I think people would be pleasantly, not surprised, but they would be pleasantly happy to see what it looks like and what's going on. So we certainly welcome visitors and guests.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. It's actually a joy to be able to walk around the building and kind of show it off.
Yeah, love it.
It's really a fun
good.
experience.
Yeah.
And again, our secretaries are the same, Karen and Suzanne, and I'd be happy to sit down with families as well. Our number is 362-1200. Website also under construction right now. It's going to look new and improved really soon. But our staff is completely receptive to answering questions, having people in the classroom, and interacting with students. It can be really fun. There's really nothing better than going and seeing how lively the classrooms are.
Yeah, it was just interesting. I'll tell one anecdote before we close. It's a Fort River one. There was a program that your art teacher had started with some researchers at UMass around kind of animals and animal adaptations, and it was really neat integration. A lot of what both of you were speaking about, high-level engagement, hands-on, very real world. And what was interesting is seeing the adults who came in from the university and the questions that students asked them, the level of inquisitiveness and creativity. On the way out, both the adults said, wow. Yeah. And one of them was a parent, right, in your school, but just to see that in the classroom context does more than what we could ever share on a show like this.
Right.
I think we're doing some things right.
I think so. I want to thank you, Diane. Thank you, Derek, for joining us. And I want to thank the viewers for tuning in to Window into ARPS. We'll be back with another episode soon. And as always, thanks for viewing.